Over 2,000 years ago, something happened. A huge shift in thinking that completely changed how we see the world, how we experience art, and even how we deal with suffering itself. Today, we're diving into Friedrich Nietzsche's wild idea that it all started with the death of one specific art form: Greek tragedy.
But let's start with a question, a pretty big one that's at the heart of all of this. What if suffering wasn't some problem we needed to solve? What if it was actually a necessary, even beautiful, part of a meaningful life? Just hang on to that thought, because the ancient Greeks, they had a really powerful answer.
All right, so our story kicks off in ancient Greece, right at the collision point of two massive opposing forces, two gods, really. And for Nietzsche, their union was the absolute key to understanding the incredible power of tragic art. So, on one side, you've got the Apollonian spirit. Think Apollo, the god of light, reason, and beautiful, orderly things. This is like the protective mask of structure that makes our world make sense. But on the other side, lurking underneath, is the Dionysian. This is Dionysus, the god of wine, chaos, pure instinct. This is the abyss, that untamed, raw energy of life where all the rules just melt away into something terrifying and, kind of ecstatic. Now, here's where it gets really cool. The Greeks didn't try to pick a side. Instead, they brought these two opposites together. Attic tragedy, the works of masters like Sophocles, wasn't just a play. Nietzsche called it a mystical marriage. It was basically this cultural technology that let people stare right into that Dionysian chaos, all the suffering and randomness of fate, but they could do it through the beautiful, structured shield of Apollonian art. And here's exactly how it worked. You had the Dionysian chorus on stage, and they were channeling all of that raw primal emotion from the abyss. But then you had the Apollonian dialogue, the plot, giving all that chaos a clear shape. Think about Oedipus, right? When he finds out his horrific fate, he doesn't just crumble. The sheer beauty of the play's structure turns his personal horror into something magnificent. And, this is the key, a bearable spectacle for everyone. And the result? It wasn't despair. It was this heroic yes to life.
So you see, the crucial point here is that in this worldview, suffering wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a bug in the system. It was seen as this sacred, absolutely necessary ingredient for creating something beautiful and grand. It was the friction that made the fire.
But, as you can probably guess, this delicate, divine balance wasn't meant to last. A whole new way of thinking showed up, one that didn't want to balance these forces. It wanted to get rid of one of them completely. Nietzsche has this amazing image for it. He calls the arrival of Socratic thinking a cold lantern of logical optimism. Just picture that. It's not the blazing, chaotic fire of the gods. It's this small, controlled little light that thinks it can and absolutely should explain away every single shadow. And you can see the clash right here. The world of tragic myth celebrated this vitalizing divine madness, finding truth in ecstasy and instinct. But Socratic logic, it had this rigid, unbending demand for pure, cold reason. Tragedy found its power in appearance, in the beautiful show, while logic wanted hard, intellectual proof. And that productive friction, that creative tension between the gods, to logic, it was just a messy problem that needed to be cleaned up and solved. So what was the goal here? Well, basically, Socrates and all the philosophers who followed him just couldn't stand the mystery. They wanted to explain away the tragic myth. And in trying to do that, they started to snuff out the very creative fire that gave it life, believing that logic could just dissolve anything that didn't make perfect sense. And listen, this wasn't just some dusty academic debate. This philosophical battle completely rewired humanity's relationship with one of the most basic parts of being alive: suffering. Before this all happens, facing the awful truths of life through tragedy, that was a tool for what Nietzsche called great health. It was like spiritual weightlifting. It forced you to get strong enough to look life's brutality in the eye and still find joy. But afterwards, in a world run by logical optimism, suffering becomes like an error message. It's a sign that something's wrong, a problem you need to fix, or even better, just escape from entirely. This new way of thinking actually pushes us to run from life's most painful parts. And that, for Nietzsche, leads to the one thing he feared most: a deep, hollow world weariness, or nihilism. So what did we actually lose in this deal? We lost this incredible psychological strength that Nietzsche called the tragic disposition. This is the ability to look directly into the heart of suffering, into total destruction, and instead of falling apart, to find this deep, primordial joy in the raw, awesome power of existence itself. The end result of all this wasn't just the end of a type of play, it was the death of a way of being, the death of a powerful kind of joy, a joy that was rooted in accepting life's darkness. Let's just put it bluntly. Socratic rationalism killed Attic tragedy. By demanding that everything has to be known, that everything has to be reasonable, it just squeezed all the life out of an art form that needed mystery, instinct, and the beautiful horror of the unknown to survive. And the fallout from this was huge. That whole divine drama, the protective mask of Apollo and the chaotic abyss of Dionysus, it just vanished. The universe wasn't this masterpiece of tragic grandeur anymore, and what was left in its place? A kind of hollow world weariness, the feeling that there's nothing more to life than what we can see and measure and explain. Okay, so you might be thinking, this is a cool story about ancient Greece, but what on earth does it have to do with me right now? Well, Nietzsche's big argument is that we are all living in the long, deep shadow of this very event. He believed that modern man, that's us, we've become prisoners of our own well-ordered lives. We build everything on logic and safety and predictability. We filter our social media feeds to get rid of anything unpleasant. We plan our careers to minimize risk. We're living in this safe, clean Apollonian house, but we've boarded up all the windows, and we've totally forgotten about the wild, dark, and life-giving forest just outside. And that brings us to the real question for today, doesn't it? In our endless search for comfort, for answers, for control, are we living in the shadow of this loss? Have we traded away something truly vital, something the ancient Greeks knew in their bones? Because what was ultimately lost wasn't just a style of theater. It was that heroic affirmation, that ability to look at everything life throws at you and still say yes to all of existence, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the absolutely terrifying. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. In a world that is obsessed with comfort, a world that tries to engineer all suffering out of existence, have we accidentally lost the very strength we need to face life's magnificent and, yes, sometimes tragic spectacle? It's a tough question for sure, but it gets right to the heart of what it means to live a truly full and courageous life.